Now, the federal government is today expected to announce an early troop withdrawal from Afghanistan. For more, we're joined from Canberra by the former head of coalition forces in Iraq, retired Major General Jim Molan. Good morning. Thank you very much for your time. You've previously criticised the 2014 withdrawal date. Now that that's been brought forward, is this a mistake by Australia?
Karina, good morning. I'm very happy with the 2014 withdrawal date, and I always have been. We've got to leave at some stage. It's now how we leave that will be a very interesting proposition. I am a bit surprised that there is talk, and we've got to wait till we hear exactly what the PM's got to say. I am a bit surprised to say that we will be bringing troops out this year. The way it normally happens is that you transition and then you stay around, transition to the local Afghan control of the province, and then for the initial period of time you stay around to act as a backstop to the Afghan forces, just in case they stumble, as they inevitably will. And then you withdraw. I'd hate to see a situation where we transition, as we've got to do, and then immediately withdraw. So the detail is going to be very, very important to us assessing it, Karina.
But Australian Special Forces will, of course, stay on in Afghanistan.
Yes, they will, and I admire the government's commitment. We've given commitments like this, not we Australia, but we the West, have given commitments to countries like this in the past. We failed Vietnam many, many years ago now after we gave them commitments and didn't live up to it, after we'd withdrawn our troops, but we stayed the course in Iraq. So it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out because, Karina, I think we're now facing the real test. And the real test of all of what I've said, what other people have said, what the commentators have said, and of course what government policy is, the real test will be whether or not Afghanistan can make a choice as to its future without having the Taliban hanging from its throat.
Why do you think the government is now looking to make this decision and bring troops home earlier?
Well, it's got to come up with a plan for how it wants to withdraw prior to the Chicago conference next month. So, and of course the Chicago conference next month is being driven by the US presidential cycle. There's very little strategy in any of this. So we've got to come up, and it's good that we come up with a plan. But I guess I would caution against is that we don't transition and then immediately pull our troops out. We've done this before. We made a gross error in 2005 in a similar situation in Iraq where we thought the Iraqi local forces were capable. We transitioned and we pulled a long way back and they failed, but at least then we hadn't left the country. We could come forward and take over and prosecute the war for a few more years. So it'll be the real test now as to everything that we've done over the past 10 years, whether the sacrifice has been worth it.
But it would seem that the Afghan government and Hamid Karzai do actually want to make that announcement probably in the middle of this year that Uruzgan province will be the next province to transition to local Afghan National Security Forces.
Oh, and I'm very happy with that timeline for the transition. I think that's most appropriate. However, my fear would be that if we just transition the province and say, Afghan local forces, you're now running the show out there, and they stumble as they could quite possibly stumble, and we're not there to back them up, and then reset them and then withdraw again. If we leave the country too soon and can't come back to help them, then I think we're really pushing the risk to a high level.
Do you agree that yesterday's attacks, which was led and handled by Afghan National Security Forces, that was handled well and was an indication that Afghanistan's National Security Forces can actually go it alone?
It was a good day for the Afghan National Security Forces, but you wouldn't have known it initially from the media reports that came out. It was a good day, but let's get this into perspective. There were 30 or 40 Taliban. They attacked in 7 separate places and they were pretty amateurish. Out in the bush, out in the back country, out in the valleys of Uruzgan, it may be markedly different. If you marshal 100 Taliban against one of the Afghan National Security Forces local outposts of 40 or so people, it may be a severely different result. But I've got to say that would give you some confidence, what's happened over the last couple of days.
But it was cited at the time as a major intelligence failure that these attacks were allowed to take place in Kabul.
Oh, absolutely. And it's astounding, you know. Every time the enemy attacks us and we weren't expecting it, it's a major failure. That is the nature. You will not know what's going on in a war. You know, intelligence is just someone else's guess.
You're a military man, but I just want to ask you about the politics, because the Defence Minister Stephen Smith on Four Corners last night said that militarily is just one side of the argument, that you need to have political engagement as well. Would you like to see political engagement with the Taliban in Afghanistan?
Oh, absolutely. I think it's the only way to go, but you must engage the Taliban from a position of strength. And if the engagement of the Taliban is merely a tool to facilitate us leaving the country too soon, then it's not worth it. But by all means engage the Taliban, lay down the conditions that the Taliban must accept the Afghan constitution, they must lay down their arms, they must join the political process on a legitimate basis, and you've got grounds to engage politically.
Major General Jim Molan, thank you very much for your time this morning.
Thanks, Karina.